Hockey is a risky sport. Occasionally, athletes fly about and slice each other with blades on their feet. Simply put, accidents are unavoidable, and in the long run, careers are cut short, reputations are damaged, and lives are constantly in danger. There are injuries throughout every season, and the absence of a major player, or conversely, the timely return of a key player, can be the difference between winning and losing. So what are the most tragic accidents in NHL history? And how did they play out? Well, brace yourselves for a horror and thrilling countdown as we reveal the top 10 near-death NHL moments you have ever seen. Let's get started. At number 10, we have Trent McCleary. Trent McCleary, a winger with the Montreal Canadiens, had a cracked larynx and a punctured lung on January 29, 2000, after he took a puck to the throat while attempting to stop a slap shot by Chris Therien of the Philadelphia Flyers. The incident occurred during a game between the Montreal Canadiens and the Philadelphia Flyers. McCleary was rushed to the hospital, where he had an emergency tracheotomy that ended up being the procedure that kept him alive. However, for McCleary to be able to converse once more, he required several surgeries. After the injury, McCleary tried to play in the NHL again the following year, but he sadly could not since his airway was 15% narrower than before the incident. As a result, he was forced to retire from the sport. Number 9. Richard Zednik. Clark MacArthur knocked Ollie Jokinen down during a game between the Florida Panthers and the Buffalo Sabres on February 10, 2008. As he struck the ice, his skate raised and sliced teammate Richard Zednik's throat, cutting his carotid artery and coming dangerously close to cutting his jugular vein. After being transferred to the hospital, Zednik had surgery that lasted 1 whole hour to rejoin the artery. Although Zednik was sidelined for the remainder of the 2007-08 season, the Florida Panthers welcomed him back for his final season with the team in 2008-2009. At number 8, we have Gordie Howe. Gordie Howe played professional hockey until he was 52, but his career was dangerously close to being cut short 30 years earlier. During a playoff game between the Red Wings and the Maple Leafs in 1950, Ted Kennedy broke Howe's skull by hitting him head first into the boards as he attempted to check him. As a result, Howe was rendered unconscious and unable to move after the incident. During the procedure to relieve the pressure placed on Howe's skull, his family was extremely worried about his survival. But thankfully, in the long run, Howe returned the next year and scored 86 points, finishing the season 20 points ahead of the league average in scoring. This achievement earned him the first of 4 consecutive Art Ross trophies. What happened after that, as the saying goes, is history. Number 7. Ace Bailey. The game that took place at Boston Garden on December 12, 1933 was the one that put an end to the career of the former Maple Leaf. Eddie Shore went at Bailey and tripped him from behind after growing upset over a hit that he had just received from defenseman King Clacy. And due to his fall on the ice, Bailey had a head injury. Bailey was sent to the hospital immediately, but it seemed like he would not survive the brain hemorrhaging he had suffered that night. Bailey's prognosis was not looking good, even though he had undergone 2 procedures to relieve the pressure that was being placed on his skull. Nonetheless, he did thankfully make a full recovery. On February 14, 1934, the National Hockey League hosted its first ever All-Star game to raise funds for Bailey and his family. Before the game, as a sign that all had been forgiven between them, Ace Bailey and Eddie Shore were seen standing together holding hands. Number 6. Chris Pronger. On May 10, 1998, the St. Louis Blues and Pronger were participating in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs as they faced off against the Detroit Red Wings. After blocking a shot that hit him in the chest just to the left of his heart during the third period, Pronger fell to the ice in a way that was reminiscent of Hamlin's fall. Fortunately, Pronger was the 4th known person to survive a commotio cordis event. Even though Pronger had lost all feeling, the trainer immediately began doing chest compressions and CPR on him. And after spending the previous night in the hospital and the next 24 hours wearing a heart monitor, he was given the go-ahead to participate in the game that took place the following day. Pronger had a career spanning 18 years, during which time he participated in more than 1,100 games. In 2015, he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. He is regarded as one of the most physically demanding players in the history of the NHL. Number 5. Howie Morenz. Howie Morenz, a legendary player for the Montreal Canadiens, lost his footing during the first period of a game on January 28, 1937, against the Chicago Blackhawks. He fell to the ice, collided with the boards, and got his left skate caught in the paneling. A following defender named Earl Seibert could not stop in time, and he fell on Morenz. Consequently, Moren's extraordinary career abruptly stopped. He sustained many fractures to his leg. Morenz had a mental collapse when he was recovering in the hospital because he was depressed, and he knew that he'd never be able to play hockey ever again. After knowing this, he had a mental breakdown, and on March 8, 1937, Howie Morenz suffered a heart attack, ultimately leading to his death at just the age of 34. At number 4, we have Brian Berard. On March 11, 2000, as Berard was competing for the Maple Leafs in the Battle of Ontario, Marian Hossa, a player for the Senators, poked him in the right eye with a stick. Berard later required surgery, and as Berard went down, a pool of his blood rapidly formed on the ice underneath him. And at this point, in addition to the possibility that Berard would suffer vision loss, his professional life was in jeopardy. He had a detached retina, broken orbital bone, and cut cornea due to the accident. Berard returned to the National Hockey League, the NHL, with the New York Rangers for the 2001 and 2002 season, and proceeded to play for several more seasons after undergoing 7 operations and being fitted with a special lens to meet the minimum vision level of 2400 needed by the NHL. Number 3, we've got Steve Moore. Steve Moore's professional hockey career ended on February 16, 2004, when the Colorado Avalanche were playing the Vancouver Canucks, and it was 8:41 into the third period. The Avalanche won the game 9-2. Todd Bertuzzi allegedly attacked Moore in order to exact revenge for a hit he gave to Marcus Naslund, the captain of the Vancouver Canucks. Bertuzzi allegedly grabbed Moore from behind, smacked him in the face, and then tossed him to the ice. Steve Moore was carried off the pitch on a stretcher after lying motionless on the ice for 10 whole minutes. During that time, 2 other players jumped on top of him. Moore had a concussion and 3 broken vertebrae due to the accident. He never played in another game again. In the summer of 2014, more than 10 years after the event, the 2 parties finally settled their civil action. Due to the event, Bertuzzi was given a suspension, and he later pleaded guilty to criminal assault that resulted in bodily harm. Number 2, we have Clint Malarchuk. On March 22, 1989, a shot by Steve Tuttle of the St. Louis Blues struck Clint Malarchuk in the throat while he was playing goaltender for the Buffalo Sabres. Tuttle and Uwe Krupp ended up on top of the goaltender because they became entangled and fell on top of each other before the goal was scored. Malarchuk suffered a cut to his carotid artery and jugular vein due to Tuttle's skate. A trainer with the Sabres named Jim Pizzatelli rushed to Malarchuk's aid and applied pressure to his neck to staunch the bleeding, stabilize the wound, and ultimately save Malarchuk's life. After being transported to the hospital for surgery 10 days earlier, Malarchuk performed a wonderfully speedy recovery, and he even returned to the ice. Clint Malarchuk mentions that this was one of the rare occasions when he came dangerously close to dying. Later on, he managed to live after shooting himself in the head. As a direct consequence, he developed issues such as depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, the latter of which was a direct effect of the injury. And at number 1, we have Bill Masterton. On January 15, 1968, Bill Masterton, a member of the Minnesota North Stars, was hit by Ron Harris, a defenseman for the Oakland Seals, and Larry Cahan, also a defenseman for the Oakland Seals. As a result of the hit, Bill Masterton fell backwards, landed on his head, and was knocked unconscious. After having a short return to awareness, it's said that Masterton repeated the words, "Never again, never again," before experiencing another episode of unconsciousness. It took him 30 hours after the hit before he died from his injuries. making him the only player in the NHL to pass away as a direct result of an injury incurred while playing on the ice. In honor of his legacy, the National Hockey League awards a trophy carrying Masterton's name to the players who best exemplify perseverance, sportsmanship, and the dedication to hockey each year. So, how dangerous do you guys think that the NHL is? And which NHL players do you know have come close to death during an NHL game? Please let us know in the comment section down below. Subscribe and leave the notification bell turned on, keep your stick on the ice, and we'll see you in the following video.